Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you, and welcome to our very first research brown bags, held by Responsible Innovation and Entrepreneurship Initiative, supported by our Lam Larsen College of Business. And our topic today is about a visionary leadership, and why visionary leadership may limit employees' contribution to idea contests. And we have Dr. Carsten Schultz and Dr. Julia Kroh from Kiel University in Germany, Center of Responsible Innovation, to join us. For those I haven't had the privilege of meeting, my name is Chen Wei Li, and I'm from the Department of Management. I'm an associate professor here, and my main research is focused on leadership and also employee voice and employee creativities. Before I introduce today's speaker, a few housekeeping items. If you have any questions, just feel free to unmute yourself and join the conversation. We intend to make our research brown bags, like informal conversations, share ideas with each other. But if you feel more comfortable, posting your questions to the presenters on the chat, please feel free to do so too. I will make sure keep an eye on the chat. So let me introduce our honored guest speaker today. First, Dr. Carsten Schultz has been a professor of technology management at Kiel University since 2012, and one of the co-founders of the Kiel Institute for Responsible Research. From 2008 to 2011, he held the junior professorship for management of service innovation and technology transfer, endowed by Deutsche Telekom AG at the Technical University of Berlin. And from 2004 to 2008, he had the Siemens Center for Knowledge Interchange, the strategic partnership between Siemens and the TU Berlin. He's committed to promoting knowledge and technology transfer as a member of the scientific board of the Center for Entrepreneurship from Kiel University, as a member of the supervisory board of the Kiel Science Center and as head of the innovation management sub-project of the Mittelstand-Digital Zentrum, Schleswig-Holstein. So Dr. Carsten Schultz is also a member of the supervisory board of the University Medical Center Greifswald, and a member of the scientific advisory board of the German Foundations for Chronically Ill. Hopefully I say all the name correctly.
You made it great. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. And we have another guest speaker, Dr. Julia Kroh. She's a postdoctoral researcher at the Chair of Technology Management at Institute for Innovation Research at Kiel University, Germany. And her research focuses on management and also, focus on internal and external stakeholders in innovation process. Her research fields comprise the management of complex innovation processes like digital innovation, urban innovation, innovation in digital ecosystems, and service innovation. Her work has been published in Journal of Product Innovation Management, among others. Without further ado, I would love to have you two take away.
Actually, we planned it that Julia is doing the presentation, so she has the privilege to present a great paper. But if we have later on some time, I'm also happy to say something about our new institute on responsible innovation. So, but we will see if we have time.
Here, all right. Thank you for this very nice introduction. I hope you can all hear me, or just give me a sign when you're not able to hear me. So we here decided that I'm going to present the paper, and then that we will afterwards have like a discussion all together where like all the authors may join. Just a few words. We also have Christopher in the chat today, who is like the main author of this paper. and who's also the PhD student that won the award for this paper. So glad that he also made it to join today. All right, then let me just open my slides. And yeah, with this, I'm just going to start to present our paper with the title "Why Visionary Leadership May Limit Employees' Contribution to Ideation Contests." So to give you like a short background and to categorize it maybe like in the field of responsible innovation, we see that in total the complexity of innovation processes increases because of several different megatrends. Of course, sustainability issues are a case, but we also face like an increasing digitalization of like furthermore established industries and established companies. And against this backdrop of complex innovation processes, we see that the contributions of different internal and external stakeholders increase tremendously. And as such, of course, we have several different external stakeholders that may be relevant in a company, but what we are focusing on in this paper are like some more internal stakeholders like employees. Because, of course, the involvement not only of external stakeholders, but also of internal stakeholders is quite important and is also part of a responsible innovation process. One possibility, and also quite nice possibility to use it as a field experiment to involve employees are ideation contests. Because you all may have heard of ideation contests, these are kind of instruments that are used for internal crowdsourcing. They are always limited in time, so that it's like very good to see which ideas are like given and created in a specific time horizon. And there are also a lot of companies that just use these kind of ideation contests, some larger companies, German companies, but it's also quite common to be used in some smaller companies. And when we like continue our journey through this paper, I'll also show you, of course, the case of companies that we used for our study. Just to give you a little bit more of the background of our research question. So we think that employees are like a really core to do high quality ideas, to get high quality ideas. And there are, of course, several different possibilities to get the ideas from the employees, and contests or campaigns, like everything that is timely limited, is one possibility to do so. As a result, of course, a company wants to have innovations that they can use in the future. But of course, these employees do not act on their own. They are influenced and guided by their leaders. And we chose the visionary leadership as one leadership style that really promotes innovations, because I tell you that, or I show you a definition in a minute, the visionary leaders often promote desirable states of the future. But it's not only the leaders that, of course, take a central role. We also see that the communication is very important, and especially the communication that is on an organizational level. So how an organization promotes the need to innovate. And this, of course, is not complex enough. And as such, we return or go back to the employee level by introducing the personal competence or the perceived competence of an employee as one determinant of these relationships. And as such, we ask the following research question, that is, how do the organizational vision, communication, and the employees' competence interact with the visionary leadership to create ideas or employees contributions. We use, as I said before, the concept of visionary leadership. So that's the image of that a leader creates to show states of the future. And this image may be designed in very different ways, and this depends on the vision communication. And we distinguish two different communication styles. So one is a promotion-oriented, and the second one is a more prevention-oriented. This means, in case of the promotion-oriented vision communication, that you focus on the chances and positive sides that the future may have or that you may achieve through innovation, while the prevention-oriented communication style focuses more on the threats of the innovations. The second contingency, as I said before as well, is the employee's competence, perceived competence that relates to the ability to deal with uncertainties in the environment, but also with kind of complexity levels, and to deal also with the content of the visions in the leadership style. Going back to the employee's contribution, we use in our study the number of submitted ideas and the quality of submitted ideas to ideation contests as a proxy for the participation of employees and the quality of participation of these employees in ideation contests. Looking into the literature, it's not really clear, or it remains kind of unclear how exactly visionary leadership may contribute to ideation contests or to employees' contributions in these ideation contests. There's a lot of literature that underlines like the positive influence of visionary leadership on employees' contribution, because of course visions, they give a meaning, they show how the future will look like. Often this is a desirable state of the future. And with this, they of course reduce the uncertainty of the future. So also reduce the complexity that the future of course has. And it also helps to align to a common objective in an organization, because you are all like aiming for a common goal, so to say. So this may also kind of be a strategic decision on how to use such visions. But on the other hand, we also found some papers that stated that this visionary leadership, or the influence, the positive influence of visionary leadership relies on several situational and personal factors of employees, of individuals, and of course also of the organization. For example, in case of your fuzzy visions, maybe too radical visions, this may even increase the complexity and even increase the uncertainty for the employees. So this kind of relationship a little bit kind of remains unclear in literature at the moment. Going into like our first hypotheses, we state that of course, and first sight, the organizational vision communication influences the relationship between visionary leadership and employees' contribution. Going back to the first promotion-oriented vision communication, their organizations highlight in this case the positive consequences of a vision. And this, of course, underlines this common mission that I talked about before. In case of a prevention-oriented communication style, this is the other way around. So if we look at prevention-oriented communication style, we argue that this might undermine, in case, a more general, the more opportunity-oriented visionary leadership style. And as such, it may strengthen the resistance of employees in the innovation process and also in the ideation contest. And this is the other way around, going back to the promotion-oriented vision communication that is more in line with what a visionary leadership is defined by, like creating the more desirable picture of the future. And as such, we state that this relationship gets more positive. So the relationship between visionary leadership and employees' contribution will be more positive if we see a more promotion-oriented organizational vision communication. The second level of interaction then employees' competence, and this is often defined as like just the experience or the ability to master challenging tasks. And this also, of course, is the feeling of being competent to do daily work on the one side, but also to be able to solve innovation tasks on the other side. And what literature states is that employees with higher competence have maybe higher abilities, higher experiences to master challenging activities just on their own. So this is why they may not necessarily rely as much on leader and on like the content of the organizational communication as employees with lower competence may do. And this is why we like add a three-way interaction to our two-way interaction that states that dependent on the competence of employees, our relationships will be stronger or weaker. All right, to sum it up, like in a picture and in a model, see that we, of course, have direct effect of visionary leadership on the contribution that is moderated by a two-way interaction. So organizational vision communication, and the competence is like the added three-way interaction. We did several studies to analyze our and to analyze the relationships, and I'm going to go through them all step by step in the next minutes. So what we have is like study 1 and 2. These are like online experiments, scenario-based online experiments, and we have study 3 that was a field experiment. So we tested all of our relationships with data from respondents first, with working individuals on respondee. That is quite similar to Amazon MTurk, so it's a market research institute in Germany. But we also tried to validate our results with a student sample. So they did like basically the same tasks. So something that is quite special, I guess, is our field experiment where we did idea campaigns with 4 energy utilities in Germany. And energy utilities are mostly public owned, but they are like very or kind of special because they had this market shift from being like a more public owned company to be a company that now has to act like in a real world market setting with like competitors, stuff like that. So quite a very interesting research field because I think all of these energy utilities never did an ideation contest before. So this is why we were able to like get to really introduce something new from the innovation management perspective. All right, so let me then start with our online experiments. What we did is we manipulated the organization vision communication and the visionary leadership by introducing text vignettes that like our respondents received. So we, on the one hand, described the leader or the supervisor that was more visionary or non-visionary. And in addition to that, we introduced the digital transformation as like one task or one trend that will change the energy industry. So we used the same context for all of the studies. Of course, we had kind of some sample characteristics introduced. We tried to include some idea generation tasks in the setting, but as you may imagine, this is like very different with people not being like very familiar with the energy industry. So this is why we measured the idea generation based on some items, and was kind of the willingness of people to generate new ideas against this backdrop in the company. We also had a second, we included a second task, and that is that the people had to select 5 innovations out of a list of 15 innovation examples that we gave them, and they should select which ones they would pursue in future. And these ideas had different levels of innovativeness, and this is, at least in the online experiment, the proxy for our idea quality. All right, then let's jump into the first results we are now in the Market Institute sample with about 450 respondents. Unfortunately, we do not find support for our first hypothesis, but we do find support for our second hypothesis that relates to the 3-way interaction effect dependent on employees' competence and its influence on employees' contributions to ideation contests. As of course, this is also always quite hard to do an interpretation just based on the regression coefficients. We included some of the plots of the moderation effects. So we have on the left side idea generation, on the right side the idea quality dependent on the visionary leadership. So non-visionary on the left side, visionary on the right side. And what we see, especially like on the left side, is that in case of visionary leadership, we see that the idea generation is always highest for employees with high competencies, and it's quite similar high regardless of the organizational vision communication. Because we have like the first one is the promotion communication with high employee competence, and then right down there we have the prevention communication together with the high employee competence. So in case of visionary leadership, it may be true that there is not really a difference between different styles of communication in this case. Looking at the idea quality, some things also change, but we see that there are differences between non-visionary and visionary leadership. Looking into the results of our student sample, so again the same online experiment style, we added idea generation tasks in here, but what we unfortunately see is that there are not really significant results in the sample of about 100 students. But I think all these results will offer really nice points for the discussion later on. Because what I want to show you in the next step is what we did in the field experiment. So to give you a little bit of background information, In Germany, we have a lot of research projects that are run together with project partners. A lot of these projects are then funded by public institutions or by the government, for example, that is very interested in the research results. And so there's always like kind of close collaboration between research and practice in companies. And in this case, we did a project together with energy utilities, and this project was on digital innovations and how digital innovations may shape the role of employees. And in this context, we had really nice opportunities to get data, because the companies were very open-minded, so at least in regard to doing research together with us. And this is why we were also able to do these ideation contests in the companies. Even before we announced the ideation contests, we did a survey in all of the companies. And this is where like our independent variables come from. So this is where we asked on the leadership, on the visionary leadership, where we asked like all the individual items and constructs. At this point in time, none of the employees knew that ideation contests would be there. In this questionnaire, pseudonyms were created. So this is quite important, because together with these pseudonyms, we were able to match ideas with personal information from the questionnaires before, or from the survey before. We introduced a vignette into this survey for the organizational vision communication. And what we did there is we gave, even before the survey started, a newspaper article to the people that was either promotion oriented or prevention oriented, was about like how digital innovations will shape like the future of energy suppliers, whether this will be a chance or whether this will be more a threat, or whether there will be a lot of competitors in there. And after that, we announced the ideation contest, and we really did real life idea campaigns with those companies. So what you see here on the right side are some impressions here of our marketing materials. We also had students in these companies that assisted in like submitting ideas, that motivated the employees to participate. Were also that they were really active in there, and they were a part later on the in the evaluation of those ideas. You see it on the slide right here. We also introduced a brand, the Ideenwerk. So like means energy ideas for energy utilities. We had about 300 ideas that were submitted from a lot of employees. We did this on an online platform with a digital tool, so that the employees were also able to use it as a kind of social media tool and to comment and to like ideas. And after these ideas were submitted, there was also a jury that evaluated the ideas, and then we also had some winners. But we did not include this. Of course, we have the winning ideas in our sample, but we did not include a measure on winning ideas, yes or no, because we evaluated the innovativeness of the ideas. This is where we are going to jump to the main results based on our field study. And what we see is that we find support for hypothesis 1 and hypothesis 2. but maybe like in other directions that we would have expected before. What we see is that there is this kind of weakening effect of or strengthening effect of the promotion-oriented vision communication on the main effect between visionary leadership and employees' contributions. And what we also find is that this two-way interaction effect depends on employees' competence. And these differences stem from like more lower employees' competencies than that of higher perceived competencies. This is what you see right here on the left side, that we really face differences, especially with regard to how the vision is communicated and which leadership style is like there. We have the number of ideas right on the top and the quality of ideas down here. Yes. All right, so this is kind of basically one of the last slides. And what is quite interesting, and I think this is also a good starting point for this for the discussion, is that we have effects that in the field here change the directions. So that is especially in the field experiment, quite different than before. And we find like more support for what theory states in our online experiments. We explain this so far by the context, because we state that especially in a more traditional industry as the energy industry, very visionary leaders may not be that convincing for employees, or maybe employees just are not able to deal with like very radical visions in this context. We also introduce, in this case, here the importance of the organizational vision communication, and this of course has to be aligned with what the leader says, but that it also takes its own situation and depends on employees' competence. So I would suggest that we start now with our discussion, or maybe one of the co-authors or Carsten wants to add something.
No, I think we should just jump into this discussion. Maybe a good starting point is that slide with that simple slopes of the field study. So the very last slide, because that illustrates very nicely what the results are. Maybe just to add a minor point of what Julia just said, the paper is still work in progress, and what is, I think, very interesting also from a more general perspective is that if we perform a typically vignette-based scenario experiment, an online experiment, the results are very much in line with what we all have expected. That visionary leadership is helpful, and also higher competence people would also contribute more intensively to ideation contests. But if we look at this plots here, we see, for instance, on the left-hand side, that in the real world, we see also the dark side of visionary leadership, in particular in the lower left-hand picture. And that dark side of visionary leadership is in particular prevalent in situations where we combine visionary leadership with a prevention-focused communication. And so we also believe that is also a sign that we have maybe a conflict between that image a direct leader of an employee creates and the image the employee gets by the overall organization or even by the overall discussion of a certain innovation or kind of activity in the environment. And if you look at the kind of innovations we are talking about, digital innovation, that is in particular the case that some employees believe that they may benefit from digital innovation, and other actually fear basically a loss of their daily work they are in.
Yeah. May I ask a couple of questions?
Sure.
Yeah, really enjoy your presentation. Very interesting. By the way, I'm from Florida State University. So yeah, I'm not really part of the San Francisco State University, but I really wanted to come and learn. So, and I found this presentation very interesting. My research area is also related to product innovation. So my first question is, I know that you look at employee competency, right? I was wondering if certain kind of employee personality would also play a role. So I may be very competent, but maybe I'm very introvert. So, and then maybe the way how I receive information also depends upon my own personality as well. So instead of just the competency. So I was wondering if you look at that my second question.
So nobody knows who should answer. So Julia, you
no,
want
just
to...
a comment, just a thought.
No, that's. I think it's a very good comment. And of course, we also added some other construct about the personality. For instance, the need for structure of the employees. And of course, it is also very interesting, and we have to look into it if we have similar differences of the effects of visionary leadership when it comes to differences between, for instance, employees with a higher need of structure or a lower need for structure.
Mm-hmm.
I think
and maybe can you maybe repeat this? Okay, I just want to add it that it's also from a theoretical standpoint, it's important that we said, okay, what's very close to this threatening situation on the individual level of the employees, so about the attitude, so what is really close to the prevention communication, to the misalignment between the leader and the organization itself, and then we said, okay, on the individual level, we say that it's the competence of the employee is the best thing that fits to really cope with this challenge of a misaligned communication, of a threatening situation, and this is why we were here directly looking at the employee's competence.
No, I think it's cool, but my comment is more like just maybe a suggestion for your future research, and just basically thinking, oh, maybe you could also consider, personality or the way how like individuals receive information as well.
I think it's very interesting to also look at it.
You look at different industries. I know you mentioned that, hey, you just use the energy industry. So what if you look at maybe fast-moving consumer products? Maybe some other kind of more consumer product industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we look into the tons of literature on crowdsourcing, of course, the main industries the colleagues are focusing on are more the classical industries like consumer products or also, of course, industrial products. But what we believe actually is that makes our study in particular strong is that we focus on an industry which is less experienced with innovation. So it's literally the case that 4 companies we did the field study in have never done anything about innovation management, and so the employees also had no past experience of, for instance, different other idea contests. And so we believe that makes it in particular possible to look at that effects of, in this case, is the visionary leadership on the efficacy of that ideation contests. But of course, energy utilities is a very specific case, and we always have to ask ourselves if the results also holds true in other industries, like you mentioned, fast-moving consumer products.
Can I ask a few questions?
Well, I've been in manufacturing and fast-moving consumer good packaging. And I think something like this is so needed to be, developed in the competency model. And I would echo that similarly, the perspective of supervisors, a comment that was made is essential. They come with biases in terms of what visions is and what innovation is. And so what I find myself is having to step back 3, 4, 5, 6 steps back to even start with the conversation of innovation.
Yes, thanks a lot for this comment. And I think that is one of the most interesting part, that also supervisors also have different visions and communicated differently than the overall organization community, because also as a supervisor is only one part of the organization. And even it's hard to say if you're talking about an individual company or talk we rather about an industry. And the employees perceive everything, what is happening, what the organization is doing. They perceive all the threats and also opportunities we have in the market, and that is also influencing the picture they have about the future, and not only the things what the direct supervisor is telling them.
That's correct. Right now in this economy, people are nervous. You can see it on their faces. So an additional amount of communication, and we can't communicate that things are stable because they're not, but an additional amount of the vision and what we're trying to accomplish, and the interaction in which we bring people in to provide innovative ideas has really contributed to, I think, the security of how people are feeling, because they're being heard and their ideas are being implemented. So just wanted to add that.
Yeah, just to add another thought, of course, if you look at the time we performed the study, that was in the middle of the COVID pandemic. So we performed the field experiments in 2020. And that was again a time of very high uncertainties. And if we even look now at the energy utility, it would be also interesting to actually repeat the study, because at least in Germany and Europe, that entire industry is frightened because of that very, very high energy prices. All the business models are going to have an end because of the Ukraine war in particular, and that also makes the employees nervous to the bottom.
I think Li Hua and Priyanka raised hands earlier. Li Hua?
Oh, I was just wondering whether you have any ideas why student sample didn't have any significant results. That's one question. another question I have is, do you measure those variables exactly the same for all three studies? Maybe I missed this.
Christopher, do you want to comment on this?
Yes, of course. My suggestions why we don't had significant results for the student sample, I think from methodological viewpoint, it's just the sample size is very short, but more importantly, I think that our phenomenon which we are investigating, so the impact of a threat, is not something that you can really demonstrate in a scenario. So I think you really have to be confronted with it in a real world and working setting, so at your real work. And we did a scenario experiment with the students, and so I think it's very difficult to give a text vignette to a student to say, okay, think about a threat that maybe can occur in your situation. So, and from your point of view, how would you evaluate this threat, or how would you be motivated and able to generate ideas? I think this is only has only an effect if we are talking about real world settings. So it's only visible in the field experiment. And regarding, or Carsten, do you want to add something?
No,
to
no, go ahead.
Okay. And for the second, for your second question regarding the operationalization of the variables, if they are the same, they are nearly the same. So the visionary leadership was a measured item in the field study. So we asked the participants about the degree of visionary leadership of their respective supervisor, and in the experiments it was manipulated. So we provided them a vignette that differentiate between a visionary leader and a non-visionary leader. And we had some in this point for regarding the idea quality measure, we had some differences in calculating the idea quality score. So this is kind of work in progress. We are just trying to aligning it, but we had some different operationalization of the idea quality.
And for the idea quality, especially, I kind of, I feel like I cannot understand exactly how you rate the quality of the ideas, because it seems that you give them some ideas and ask them which one is better or something. Is it possible to ask the expert in the field to evaluate their ideas or something? I'm just wondering.
Yes, so maybe I can explain it a bit more detail because it's a little bit complex. In the field study, we rated the ideas that have been generated by the employees. So we had some research experts that have great knowledge in this field, and they evaluated the ideas regarding the market newness and the organizational newness. So this was rated on a 5-point scale, and then we compared took the mean of the average evaluations. And for the task, for the idea quality task in the student and also in the respondee experiment, we gave each respondent a list of 15 innovations which have been pre-selected based on the degree of innovativeness. So they had 5 5 innovations with low degree of innovativeness, 5 with a medium degree, and 5 with a high degree. And then we asked them to select 5 out of these 15 innovations, and then we just made a sum out of their or built the sum out of the selections. So if they have selected maybe more incremental ideas, more radical ideas, so we scored for an idea quality score for each participant.
That's clear. Okay.
Yeah, maybe actually idea innovativeness would be a more fitting term, maybe. So it's about the newness of that ideas from the perception of the industry experts, or in comparison to the overall diffusion of such innovations in the market.
Thank you.
But maybe to add a point to your first question, yeah, from a very general perspective, it may also, our results which we presented here very frankly, also demonstrate maybe the limited external validity of student samples and samples like mTurk or Respondi is the same. So we believe that we have such scenario-based experiments and that we can demonstrate a complex scenario, like in this case, the threat or prevention promotion scenario and the leadership scenario. And that is, of course, not possible in 5 minutes. But if you look into the literature, I would believe that at least in the experimental corner of the empirical methods, most of the experiments are based on student samples or samples like MS and mTurk. And so we can ask ourselves, what can we actually learn from such results?
Thank you. I really like the idea of communication style and then link it to innovation. That's really interesting. What's your ideal kind of data to test your ideas? Like
I would say, yeah, I would really believe that the field experiments, so our study 3, of course, it was heavily demanding to do so. It was a 1-year experiment in 4 companies. So it was only possible because we got some public money for it. And at the end, the field experiments, it's in my honest belief, much more valid than every other student sample or MS and mTurk sample. And if we look at complex organizational procedures, we should rather take the effort to do field experiments, even if we have maybe a lower sample size.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. So we're going back to, I want to go back to that student sample, and it seems like the measures there were very categorical. There's not a lot of variance because you were doing either a promotion or prevention, and without that much variance, I think the effects are kind of going to be, it's harder to uncover those effects, it seems like. Whereas in your field study, for example, the extent of being visionary was on a Likert scale. So you get a little bit more of a, even for the same company, you have a variation of the extent of being visionary, right? Is that what's happening? A lot of the supposedly effects were just kind of masked by the way you measure with the student sample. I'm not saying that it's, you know, I mean, there's a discussion about the external validity of the sample, but I think the measures that you used to were not as did not dig deeper than you had in your field study, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So in a experiment student sample, or also the same in the Respondi sample, we just had a 2 multiplied with 2 designs. So we just had 50% of the students with the visionary leadership scenario and 50% of the students in non-visionary leadership. So it's, and of course, you're absolutely right. In reality, the world is not black and white. So it's something in between, which we had also measured by the Likert scale in the field experiment. Yeah.
We know.
Actually, Carsten just answered my question. So the field experiment had a Likert scale items, right? So I'm curious about the prevention promotion focus. So that was also on a Likert scale item, or was that high versus low?
No, that was manipulated in the field experiment. So it was very cool that the companies actually allowed it, that we communicated to 50% of the employees, more or less persistent, that the world is good, that we have a lot of digital possibilities. That was the 150%, and the other 50% of the employees basically got the message, you have to look out, digitalization is dangerous because Google and other companies are actually taking our jobs. And that was really cool. Of course, it was communicated by us. Christopher, I forgot how many times, but it was during that experiment, during the ideation contest, repeated several times.
Just quick follow up on that, actually, and another question after that. So on study 3 plot, right, on that slide that you had the plots on, there was a curvilinear graph between prevention and promotion. So I'm just wondering, how, if it's categorical, and maybe I missed, how it was. Can you show me that the study number 3 graph one thing? There was a curve on it. Yeah, right there.
Yeah, because it's the number of ideas. The number of ideas are on the log scale.
I see. Okay, so final question from me. I'm going to stop talking. So in the college, we're working on a vision statement. So Chenwei was actually one of the people working on it. So, if my question is, and you mentioned the stable industries where there's not a lot of change, right? Prevention versus promotion focus when you create vision statements, what do you, if it's a more technological, change, or there's a lot of turbulence in technology change, right? Technology change versus market change. How does this prevention, this phenomena, how do you think it changes based on the type of industry? I think it was asked a little before, the type of industry, but the idea of like market change versus technology change and how that impacts this phenomena. What is your conjecture on this?
I think Julia wants to answer something like that.
Of course.
On the very difficult questions you have to answer. You have to answer.
No, I think that so at least in my opinion, this kind of like prevention-oriented communication may be good for like short-term activation, short-term contributions, maybe. But I would say that like in the long term, communicate always on the side of the prevention and to like outline threats will maybe not be that positive for organizations as a whole, because this may very easily create kind of a culture of, fear and uncertainty, because like what was there behind. So we also introduced in this next vignette that like competitors from outside the energy industry will enter and they will like destroy business models. And this may be like in the long term, not be that promising. And I can imagine that this like more prevention-oriented communication in terms of very high turbulences may also have a more negative effect. So maybe for at least employee motivation and organizational culture, it may be more promising to focus on the more promotion-oriented side, to like motivate by competencies, chances, to underline these positive effects that also turbulence may kind of have.
Yeah, but I think you raised an important point, because so what we actually did with our prevention and promotion communication is that we combined technology and market favors.
Okay.
So we would have been better to focus more clearly on one aspect, because what digitalization means is that what we also communicated is that we have a lot of possibilities to increase quality and efficiency of our business, but also that we are able to create new markets to address new customers. And then we also combined it with the story that the very bad other industries like Google, San Francisco is very good. It's actually is entering the market, which is actually the case, of course, and that creates a different kind of turbulence in addition to the technology potentials within internal processes or energy services. Yeah.
Thank you, Carsten. Thank you, Julie.
Priyanka.
Thank you. Thank you guys for that excellent presentation. I was curious about your study 3, and I wondered why you chose to manipulate that one variable in your field study. Because as an employee, I might have certain notions about whether my organization generally communicates in a promotion-focused style or a prevention-focused style. And now if I'm in the wrong condition, then it would lead to some kind of reactance, right? That my organization has been always talking to me in a promotion-focused voice. And now you're telling me that it's prevention-focused, right? That now suddenly I'm receiving this prevention-focused message and something doesn't feel right. And I just feel this perceptual disfluency or in some kind of perceptual misfit. And that further then impacts the way I respond to your questionnaire. So I feel like the discrepancy between, the field experiment and the other experiments is quite fascinating. And yet again, we know that there is so much muddying that happens in field experiments. So how did you deal with that issue and how did you decide what to manipulate?
Yeah, again, a very difficult question. So, but maybe I can start, and Julia can also add. I think 2 points. The one point is, of course, what you said yourself, that is a typical limitation of field experiments. So, of course, the world is there and they have already information. The other point is that what you said may be also explaining our misfit of the visionary leadership style and the prevention-focused communication. Because what visionary leadership basically means is that we have a promotion-oriented communication. So we have, it's very seldom that you communicate actually a negative vision. So it's I would believe it's basically a promotion-oriented vision you are communicating as a supervisor. And what we also saw in the results is that actually the contribution are worse or reduced and have a better, worse quality if we have a misfit. So if we have a visionary leadership and a prevention communication, which we manipulated. So exactly the point you just raised.
Yeah, maybe to add to that, of course, you're absolutely right that there might be some misfits that we are not able to exclude with this field study. But I think two points that like underline that at least our manipulation is kind of robust. So first, what we always underlined, at least when we did the campaign, was so we used later on, of course, in the survey this was not possible because the campaign or the contest was not announced. But we used, of course, the campaign to like strengthen this vignettes, and in these terms we then put it in the context of the campaigns. So maybe the employees then like more related this kind of starting point to the campaign itself, and this is here that we think that this kind of also might be a little bit might reduce these misfits. And the second point is that even before we did the survey, we did some qualitative interviews. So we did not include that in this paper, but talked to a lot of employees, like all of these companies, for like half an hour, 1 hour. And we talked also to them about how like digital transformation is communicated in the company. And it seemed as if the picture was not that clear to them as well. So it was not that it turned out that there's like a really clear communication within these companies. Also, of course, the CEOs or maybe more top managers kind of have a specific personality, but it turned not out that is what maybe this strong.
Thank you. I mean, I wonder if including a measure of processing fluency or something on those lines, or if you had any measure that would be sort of this measure of just a feeling of fluency, that this fits, that this feels right, might be helpful.
So we don't have fluency, but we have related concepts. Maybe we could think about it to edit. But actually, that is it's also it's the second paper out of the study where we look at the differences on the organizational level, because even if you have 4 energy utilities, even in the same market, even in the same region of Germany, about the same size, or they are SMEs, we have differences, like in the perception or the activities of the leaders, or how they actually formalize their internal processes in the history and so on. And that context is also explaining, to a certain extent, the effect of an ideation contest on, for instance, innovative work behavior.
I think field experiment is always like a fascinating, area. Like depending on the industry we are going into, like the results can be quite different. The context. Ian will got the last questions since given the time, limit, and Professor Carsten Schultz, he's gonna share with us more information about their Institute for Responsible Innovation.
Okay, thank you. Last question. And actually, I'm trying to fit, or I'm trying to relate the research into the responsible innovation realm that the center is focused on. And one aspect of responsible innovation is envisioning the future. And the current understanding or recommendation is to envision the future, you have to get a lot of input from different stakeholders, including possibly here employees and users. And so my question was, in your presentation of the stimuli, where you had envisioned this future, whether it's prevention or where it's promotion, and now that Julia has mentioned earlier, just that you had some sort of a discussion, were those elements incorporated in the stimuli? Because responsible innovation would say, or would suggest, based on the current understanding, that it's not just one person's envisioning the future. It's not one person's perspective of the future. It's a collective vision of what's going to happen. Was that included in your stimuli? Because that would kind of go into the responsible innovation aspect of the research.
Here. So is this another one of these difficult questions, Carsten?
Yeah. So you just started to answer it. So
No. So when I think you're referring to this text vignettes, right? So how we developed them. Yeah. So indeed, we talked to at least an association of their energy utilities, and we discussed these texts with them. So of course we did a desk research on what future trends will be in this industry, which ways the industry also might go. And so we tried to address this point to get more opinions than just our opinion in this case on how to design it. But you're absolutely right.
So there was input from, it wasn't just, it was not presented as this is the leader's vision, this is where the industry is going. I guess that's, okay. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, yes. Actually, it's just a minor point that the manipulation of the communication in this manipulation, we actually said that association of energy utilities is believing that digitalization is good for us or bad for us. And so that is maybe a representation of that collective framing processes you are referring to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, maybe I just use only some minutes because actually maybe before I start the presentation, to give you a little bit of background, Mino and I met again at the very nice conference IPDMC. It is this year, and we discussed, okay, what is actually new. And I said, actually, you know, we just founded or in the process of founding an institute for responsible innovation. And Mino said, you know what, we do the same. And that was then also the idea, okay, let's maybe think about also some future possibilities to collaborate, because also one of the side aspects is that, of course, what you all know is that we are so close to each other, Kiel and San Francisco, because we are sister cities. And so we said, okay, this might be good to give you a little bit of background. And maybe as one point is that the background is in the progress of developing, because we are, oops, here is it. You see my slides, right? So we are in a process of founding. We had a first symposium, a regional symposium of the establishment of that Kiel Institute for Responsible Innovation, and what I'm going to present you very briefly is our very general idea about it. And of course, it's not only me; it's a bundle of people. And what I also saw on your first web page on your center, I think there are very similar points what we are thinking about and what you are thinking about. Maybe it's as a starting point, what we are going to do is actually that the slogan here on the left-hand side: responsible innovation is achievable. It's so what we do, what we want to focus on is the question: which capabilities, processes, structures are needed for organization to do responsible innovation. So it's not the normative perspective that we need to have responsible innovation. It's also maybe not the technological perspective, how to, for instance, to create sustainable logistic change. It's the organizational and marketing capability perspective. And we are, of course, a group of people. So you may know the German system is a bit different in comparison to the American system. So we have still a very traditional share system. So we are 4 shares as the founding team, but that of course includes everything who is answering the difficult questions and are doing the work. And we are 4 colleagues, which are the founding members, so the core team currently of the so-called KIRI Institute. So KIRI is Kiel Institute for Responsible Innovation. That is Claudia Büngerler, with a focus on human resources, diversity, creativity, team research, fields like this. That is Stefan Hoffmann, a professor for marketing with a specific focus on sustainable consumption. And in this regard, for instance, he's doing a lot about rebound effects of consumption decisions. And Achim Walter, he's also a professor of entrepreneurship and innovation management, and I'm called technology management, but that is basically the German system. You only have one professor for every topic, so you have to look for different names for it. So the motivation is it's basically the same as everywhere, and we know that we have all that increasing very complex demands, which are also Julia mentioned in the beginning a little bit. And what we want to do is that we want to support organizations to achieve successful responsible innovation. For instance, as one of the point, to increase the sustainability in a very broad sense, like as this as sustainable development goals. And What we also said is that we want to look at that capabilities, so the internal processes. So we really want to make it achievable, as you said, is so that we also believe that in the past, the topics like sustainability, which is of course related to responsibility, is very often dealt with more from a symbolic perspective, or as you also may see it from a market perspective. So it's greenwashing, sustainable washing. And what we want to do then is, and that is a process we are in defining what is actually for us responsible innovation, is that we want to help organizations, particular private firms, to be more responsible. And here we follow the current discussions. So basically the idea that we also as public organizations, public companies want to do good with our products, and we want to avoid harm. In particular, we want to avoid harm in a long-term perspective with our innovation activities, with unintended or even intended harmful consequences. And therefore, we need to have, for instance, responsible governance structures, but there's also a goal of responsibility itself, that we also have to have organizations as maybe cooperatives with a new kind of governance, with better possibilities, for instance, of the society to influence companies' decisions. So some maybe also as just as a starting to give a little bit a background. So what we are talking about, it is of course on one hand complete shifts, radical innovations, transformations of industries, which also maybe are supported by activities like the Cradle to Cradle initiative, which is basically saying that we need to have a complete different approach on economy, on doing business, on business models, and we have to have also business models around it to support that circular economy on different in different industries, but in particular also with that responsibility goals. And that certification, that cradle to cradle certification, is itself a very good case where we can actually have maybe possibilities to support organizations to be more responsible, or very hands-on examples. Here, original case from Schleswig-Holstein, so close to Kiel. So a very typical Schleswig-Holstein, so Northern German product, marmalade, and of course we have in all these companies possibilities to increase in this case sustainability, for instance, to avoid the sherry stone waste, so sherry marmalade, and we want to influence it in a way that we follow that idea of the circular economy by using, for instance, that cherry stones for different purposes, as also building materials and cosmetics. So that is just a starting point, and what we are looking at is, as I said, what are the challenges of responsible innovation, and actually also here I think we follow also your basic understanding that we believe that responsible innovations are not only doing good, but they are in particular very complex. So we have a very high number of components to be looked at. We have in particular a lot of goal conflicts, tensions within the decision processes. We have also a very high uncertainty because we are uncertain about the future technological and market situations, but we're also uncertain in this case about that impact of our products and services we are innovating on future states, and we also therefore have difficulties in innovation processes. And of course we have a lot of conflicts of norm and values, in particular between the let's say, the traditional way of doing business and that more responsible way of business. And at the end, the question is always which perspective, which norms and values actually dominate the decision process, the resource allocation. And then I also found it actually when I prepared the slide also on your side. If we followed that, it's today more or less established idea of responsible innovation, of that 4 dimensions of anticipation, inclusion, reflexivity, and responsiveness. And what we at first did and doing still the progress is that we group different topics, research topics we are working at currently and also in the past under these different dimensions. For instance, what we do as a group, as the institute, we do research on, for instance, strategic foresight. So the identification of future trends, in particular also when it comes to conversion processes. We look also on scouting processes and we also look at unintended consequences of technological innovation, like, for instance, in the sharing industry. What we do at the Institute is quite a lot of research about open innovation, in particular about university industry collaborations, but also quite a lot of project about innovation ecosystems, which are not per se responsible. But for instance, Project Julia is also on cities, on urban innovation, is in particular looking at aspects where we can use urban innovation ecosystem to increase, in this case, the sustainability of cities. Also, the crowdsourcing examples, which we just presented you the paper in, is also, at least in our broader understanding, a part of that KIRI story. So it is where we include in our study internal stakeholders, but of course in the marketing group, they do also a lot of studies, and also we do it about user innovation, so how to introduce users in innovation processes. And also the diversity topic, which is very important in our group, is reflecting that inclusion and so on. I think we do. You can follow. The idea is that also aspects of leadership styles we have is, of course, maybe it has a relationship to at least parts of the reflexivity aspects, and the responsiveness is of course reflected, at least in our perspective, in that innovation capabilities, agile processes, also aspects which are important in our group of strategic change. So how can we break past dependencies, and organization inertia is related to it. To make it maybe as a last point a little bit more concrete, I brought you 4 actual projects by the 4 people, our core team. So what we are doing beside, for instance, that internal crowdsourcing project you just saw. So Claudia, for instance, also with other colleagues, is doing quite a lot of asking how can we actually train teams and leaderships for different purposes, for instance, for being more creative in a sense, to produce more novel solutions. And for these reasons, we also had in the past invested quite a lot in research infrastructure. For instance, we have an escape room as a lab where we use the escape room, where you are in a very complex setting, different rooms, and you want to go out, and we use it as an experimental lab, and we train the people differently and see how the teams are actually performing in solving the tasks in the different rooms, and how they perform in that escape room. So it's about training of teams and leaderships. As I said, Stefan Hoffmann is doing a lot of projects in the relationships of explaining, not estimating, explaining the causal background of rebound effects. that is basically the story where when you include or introduce, for instance, a car sharing or a sharing mobility concept, you have a lot of unintended consequences. That, for instance, with car sharing or later on with autonomous vehicle, you are going to replace public transport. And that is something which is not intended, and it's of course important to look at consumer behavior aspects. How can we actually influence the perception of that consumers, and how can we actually prime and frame their decisions? Achim Walter is doing projects on green patents, university patents in particular. So if we as a university have technologies which are patented in that, and sustainability is a green world, we believe that it's even harder to get it transferred to industry. And he's looking at these processes. How can we actually transfer green patents from university into actual applications? And what we also in my group are also doing is that we deal a lot with healthcare innovations. And what is also part of our responsible innovations story is that we have larger projects about the impact of technologies, in this case of artificial intelligence, on the social system behind. So how does the role of a physician actually change due to an introduction of a data-based data decision support system in healthcare? And one step further, how does this actually impact as a social and hierarchical system of a hospital, which is basically built around expert status? And if we have technologies like artificial intelligence in healthcare, we very often do not reflect on this disruptive processes on the social system and hierarchy system. So that is just a selection of projects, and what we are currently in is actually is a phase of defining not only what is responsible about the things we did so far, as of course, for instance, this 4 projects already started before the foundation of the new institute, but in particular that we now want to go in this direction to define more research questions which are in the narrow core of the responsible innovation topics, and for this purposes, research-wise, but also student-wise, of course, a collaboration approach, in particular also with you, would be great. And as I said at the beginning, we may not only have a reason to collaborate because we maybe share more or less the same ideas, the same ambitions in this direction. Also, I think what we also said in our meeting, Shenwai, Minu, and I, is that we also have different colleagues with at least a little bit overlapping research interest and competencies. But we also have the opportunity to do a little bit more in this direction, because we have that City initiative. I know in San Francisco hardly anybody knows about it, but it's a bigger topic in Kiel. So actually, Kiel is the only sister city in Germany of San Francisco, and at least on our side, that also comes with some money, which is good. And the money means that we have possibilities, for instance, to get also exchange program finance, at least to set up maybe a joint symposium conference as a starting point, and where we have then the possibility to discuss it in more details. So far, our presentation of the Kiel Institute, we even have not a web page so far, so we are very new. We are in the beginning of defining it, and I think that also makes us similar, because you're also in the beginning of defining what is the Center of Responsible Innovation and Entrepreneurship.
Thank you so much, Carsten. I think we can, definitely have more collaborations in the future and grow together. Thank you so much for all the wonderful presentations, the information sharing, and for all you guys joining us today for the wonderful, questions asked and the conversation. Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Great for having us with you. We are very proud to be the first brown bag seminar on this of the Center of Responsible Innovation and Entrepreneurship. So we have at least a part in your history.
Yes.
And thank you also for organizing.
Our pleasure seeing all of you.
Yeah. Yeah, but Mino Shivai, we should maybe not today, but we should set up